How's it going, everyone? I'm Austin from Spur Design Garage, and in this video I'm going to be talking to you about what it's like to go to design school, more specifically for industrial design, so product design, industrial design, transportation design, degrees like that. I went to ArtCenter College of Design in Pasadena, California, and so my experience is a little bit more specific to that, but there's a lot of crossover in the design school realm. Overall, I would say you could sum it up as very challenging, quite intimidating and stressful at times, and very tiring, and yet very rewarding at the same time. I'm going to break down design school into 5 main buckets that I can say kind of represent the experience of going to design school. More specifically, again, I went for transportation design at the beginning of ArtCenter and transitioned to product design. So I have a little bit of knowledge in both areas. The number one thing I would say right when you begin design school is it feels very intimidating. There's a lot of things that you're going to learn that you're not comfortable with, that you haven't experienced before. There's a lot of things that you're going to have to step into that you're not comfortable with. One of those things for me was public speaking at the time. I drew constantly as a kid since I was like 12 years old and started ArtCenter at 19. And I thought I was very talented at the time. And once I got there, I realized there's a ton of people like me who were even more talented than I was. And so you have all these classmates who are really, really talented, all these instructors who are super knowledgeable, and it can be intimidating, especially when you're presenting work up on the wall in front of everyone. I mean, you have to put your best foot forward. And that can be pretty challenging when you first start. And you end up comparing yourself often to upper term classmates who are putting out this amazing work and wondering how you could ever get to that level. And it is totally possible, but at the beginning it feels really, really intimidating. I would say another part about that intimidation is the critiques and the instructors themselves. There are a lot of really challenging critiques that you go through. Critiques that may leave you feeling a little bit embarrassed about the work that you just presented or the presentation that you just gave. It is really hard at the beginning to go through that and to have your work judged that way in front of everyone. You know, it could be a class of 20 people and the instructor is telling you, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. That's just something that you get used to through your time, and you start to realize why that's a healthy and important thing to go through, even to the extent of having that in the industry itself. Number 2, the workload is crazy. So when I was starting my first term as a transportation design major, I had, I think, 7 classes, and 4 of which were considered studio classes. So those are the ones where you're going to be focusing on your design work and learning design techniques, and the other 3 at the time I believe were electives, and so they might be more kind of generalized education, or maybe more broad, so not necessarily specific to transportation design or product design. Either way, there was 7 classes, all had quite a huge workload. I can't remember specifically what they were, but I remember design process 1 in transportation design was something like 30 11 by 17 sketch pages just filled completely with solid ideas. Part of that intimidation factor is that you can't just put a really poorly done sketch up on the wall. You have to give it your all on every single page. So for each week having to do 30 11 by 17 great ideas, you know, super high quality, that can be really, really challenging in the beginning. In high school I didn't experience that, or community college, there wasn't nearly that much work. And basically every class that I had, those 7 classes together, were a variation of that amount of work. So it's pretty draining on your stress level, trying to get through all of that. In one class later on in college, I remember taking a photo of what our week 1 homework was, just because I thought it was, obviously I had to reference it, but I thought it was quite a lot. So I still have that photo. Step 1 on a Monday, email the final research plans to the instructors for approval by 7 p.m. Class was over at 4 p.m. This had to be a really long document explaining exactly how we were going to go about researching for this particular topic. Step 2, recruit participants. So this is all 1 week, right? We had to make sure that we had enough participants to go through the research with and to do really in-depth research for, to get them signed up in the correct way, make sure that they had all of the correct privacy and confidentiality paperwork that was necessary, and they had to be good participants for whatever topic you were researching at that time. That included preparing the consent forms, which we had to let the instructors see beforehand by 2 p.m. on Tuesday. So that was another time crunch. We then had to conduct observations and interviews for 2 different participants throughout that week. That meant incredibly in-depth interviews and observations of the chosen activity that we were going to research. At the time I was doing a trail running project, so that's what I did. We then had to create a user experience journey map, which is a very in-depth process for laying out the observations that you just had on those participants. So 2 really large boards filled with post-it notes, things explaining observations that you found, needs and wants that may have been there for different products, the kinds of products they were carrying, articles of clothing, the setting, the environment. I mean, pretty much anything that you could possibly observe that may inform your product design later on is what we needed to accomplish with that board. We then had to upload highlight reels of each of those interviews. Again, those interviews lasted maybe an hour each. And we then had to edit those interviews into highlights where we would fish out observations and insights that were valuable for our project, and then upload those so the instructors could see those. And then the last one says review field notes from those observations and write a reflection of each observation and insight that you found. Describe what you saw, what people said. Don't draw any conclusions. And then we needed to upload those notes to the instructors in that week as well. And again, all these had to be the utmost quality because we were going to get judged on those in the next week. And that was 1 class of, I believe I had 6 classes at the time for 1 week. So it can definitely be a lot. Yeah, so just be prepared. You will get insanely tired by doing this amount of work. All right, so the third point to what design school is like, I would say that devotion to the process is a very good thing. And it's part of the lifestyle that you're going to experience at design school. What I mean by that is the best way to succeed in school is to just give in to the process, whether or not it feels harsh or overly complicated or maybe too heavy, or you don't agree with the tactics that the instructor is putting on. It's best to just let all of that go and to try to just feel out what they're trying to teach you and what the process is trying to show you. Just get used to it. Don't fight it. You may spend 95% of your time at school, and that can be challenging when you're first starting out and you're not used to that. It's a good thing to get used to that quicker or sooner rather than later, just so that you're getting as much time as possible working on your projects at school. A lot of people say that you don't have a life when you're at design school. You do have a life, especially in some terms. They may be slightly lighter than others. And some of that life happens to be at school, but there's an interesting camaraderie that happens when you're there. It's fun to form bonds with other classmates who are going through the same thing as you. It's all a very stressful environment, and you're going through a lot of work together, and you're learning from each other and growing with each other as you go through this very tedious workload. Another part of that devotion is that it's a very competitive environment. You can't just sit there and twiddle your thumbs and hope for something to come out of the blue. You have to continue to push yourself against that competition and figure out ways to help yourself stand out in that crowded field. This is just a good tactic for you not to selfishly stand out in front of your peers, but it pushes you further than you think you could have gone. That's part of the competition, and the healthy side of that competition. Just devote yourself to that process. And again, part of that devotion, like I said earlier, is just to continue to believe in your instructor and what they're telling you, and don't try to constantly defend against what they're showing you or the work that they're assigning you. You need to just kind of fall into it and go for it. Number 4, it challenges you in many ways outside of design. You learn very quickly how to defend your designs against the instructor's critiques and questions. And most importantly, you learn to have a reason for every decision that you make. Every sketch that is up there for a reason and was designed a certain way. So in order to solve a problem, and you know exactly why you did it. That is something that takes a lot of practice to get used to, but it's really important when you get out of design school and go into the industry. Verbal communication is another big thing. At ArtCenter, it was pretty much every single class you would be up in front of everyone, including the instructors and the other classmates of yours, and you would be presenting your work for 10 minutes or so, and then defending your work or talking through your work and analyzing your work through a critique. So you have to get really good at verbal communication. And with those presentations, there's some extremely intense and high pressure presentations in front of industry professionals at a lot of schools. So learning how to handle that pressure and that stress and practice your presentations before you get in there is a really important thing to learn. Time management is another thing that you'll learn to get really good at. So for instance, I remember, some nights where I'd be setting up my presentation late at school, putting my boards up on the wall, prepping my speech in my head, polishing models, all these different things in preparation for a final presentation, and then having to go back home and prepare for the next class in the morning. So that might be going back and 3 a.m. sketching out 10 new 11 by 17 sketch sheets. Sometimes the workload is that intense, and you have to learn how to manage it and how to understand what is your priority within those projects. And the 5th point, despite all of that strenuousness and that stress, it is very rewarding. I had a great time at ArtCenter. As strenuous as it was, as physically and mentally exhausting as it was, I remember looking back on that fondly and just realizing what I went through and what I was capable of. I really learned that you basically can accomplish crazy feats in the span of a week or 14 weeks in a full term. And it's just so cool realizing once you get in there that you're basically spending your entire time being completely creative all day, and that is an awesome feeling. It's really rewarding and feels really good to be able to do that. I would say that ArtCenter was one of the hardest things that I've done, but I wouldn't be where I am today or have learned the things that I did, and also have such great memories of friends and learning that I can pretty much do anything I set my mind to. There was so many instances of that will never be possible. You're thinking that you can't do these things, and you find a way. And learning that is one of the most empowering things that I've learned in design school. Do you have any other questions about design school? Let me know in the comments, and please give me a like and subscribe if you haven't already to help me build this channel. Thank you so much.